is People of the State of Michigan versus Stephen Jones, docket number 20-238FH. And this is the time set for hearing on the defendant's motion to modify bond. We have Mr. Hess for the defendant, Mr. Jones, who is also present, and Ms. Allen for the people. Mr. Hess, I'll hear your motion.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Edward Hess on behalf of Stephen Lee Jones today. Mr. Jones was arraigned on February 24th of 2020. At that time, there was a bond condition added that he had to wear a GPS tether. He's been wearing a GPS tether ever since. According to the report from Mr. Feemster, Mr. Jones does not have any violations that were referred to the court by the probation department. There were two issues with Mr. Jones having to check in to the pretrial services department and then going home to Fenton, Michigan on US 127. Apparently there's some edge of the alleged victim's work exclusion zone that's part of US 127. Mr. Jones did call Tim Merritt at JSG both times to notify them that there was an issue, and that was not referred to the court. Mr. Jones has been in regular contact with Mr. Feemster. He's been an ideal person who's on bond as he awaits his trial. Unfortunately, the trial date in this case has had to be reset, I believe, twice because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully that's coming to a close now. I believe this record shows that as Mr. Jones has been in full compliance with his bond conditions. He's somebody also who lives in Fenton, Michigan, and his job when he was employed was in Highland, Michigan, quite a ways away from the greater Lansing area. I don't believe there's any threat or allegation of threat to the alleged victim in the case here. Just to get a little bit more explicit as to why Mr. Jones left his work, his tether went off during one of his work shifts, which was very difficult for him. He had to leave the work, and he felt that he couldn't work under those conditions. He's somebody who works in customer service, has to serve people at the restaurant, and it was very difficult and embarrassing for him. Mr. Jones calculates that he spent almost $5,500 out of pocket on the tether at this time. I do believe, Your Honor, that as this case awaits a jury trial date, that Mr. Jones is a good candidate for having his bond modified. I believe that he has shown the court through his actions that he is likely to return to court and does not present a threat to the community in general or to the alleged victim in this case. So I would respectfully ask that the court modify Mr. Jones's bond conditions to allow the tether condition to be removed. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. The people's position, Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Because the defendant has not had contact with the victim, and from what my review of the file, no violations of the GPS tether, we wouldn't have an objection to it. Typically with someone on GPS tether and we are on a normal docket schedule, we'd have this case up in a few months, but I can see it being onerous after a year and a half and still pending when we have in custody cases. So for those reasons, I wouldn't object. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it's a great alternative to people who should otherwise be in custody waiting for trial, and then, you know, they have GPS tether and they're let out. But I think Mr. Jones is someone who wouldn't otherwise be in custody. So the GPS tether just adds, I understand, an enormous expense to that time period of waiting for trial. So I will grant the motion. Mr. Jones, just understand though, that there's still a no contact provision attached to your bond, and that is no contact with Elizabeth. And if you were to violate that and she were to call and report it to the police, they have immediate arrest powers, and you would be brought before me to answer to that immediately and be subject to bond revocation. So I think you're compliant, and I trust you, but I have to make sure that you understand that as well. But I'll grant the motion to remove the GPS tether requirement from the bond.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Anything? Should I?
Usually we send my office sends a communication to the tether people if that's what you're gonna ask, I imagine how you deal with that.
Yes.
So I'll make sure that they do that. I don't know if we do a separate order or just a communication, but I'll make sure that they get word.
And how soon do you think it can happen, Your Honor?
Well, we'll send word over to them today. And just, I mean, don't cut off your tether or anything. Just make sure that you do what they tell you to do as far as coming in.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes, Your Honor, of course.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you
You
very
might
much.
want to contact them and just ask them if they've gotten the word and what do they want you to do.
Thank you, Judge Draganchuk.
Sure. You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor.